the Avrum Rosensweig show with Avrum Rosensweig. And my very dear friend, Bradley Strauss is my guest today. Brad, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you, Avrum. Nice to speak to you.
It's nice to see you too. This is a brand new show. As I mentioned previously, we did the Swag show and about 70 podcasts. And it was wonderful, just absolutely wonderful. And I enjoyed it very much. But there's a lot of things to work out when you do a podcast. It's not easy. As an example, I am working out right now my equipment at home, trying to see whether my face is on there as well as Bradley's. Now, Bradley, you're very handsome, and we'd love to see you.
I'm looking good, thanks. Yeah.
It would be helpful if I were on there as well. So it's just you. Let's see if we can fix this as we go.
Okay. There you go.
There's me. There's me. Hang on a sec. We may have to go back and forth. We'll try that. But anyway, we're really happy to be here. And the idea behind the show is to really focus on Israel and what's going on there today. Unless you've been under a stone, you do know that Israel's at war. And it's a very dire, very difficult situation. In fact, Bradley has said in previous interviews that this war is much different than other times that he has volunteered there, as in 2014 as an example. And I think what he meant by that is, and Bradley, tell me if I'm correct about this or not, but I think what he meant by that was that there is a sense of existential survival. I think all of us who are Zionists and are deep lovers of Israel, in our hearts, we know that Israel will continue and will be strong. And I heard recently somebody say that long after the terrorists Hamas, Yimach Shemo, their name should be erased, are gone, Israel will continue to thrive and the Jewish people will be strong. And I think we concur with that. Would you say so, Bradley?
Yeah, definitely. That's a sentiment I have, but there's a lot of work to get to that point yet. So,
Indeed there is. One of the things that I would like to cover today is that work that we need to do. And part of that is your trip to Israel most recently to volunteer at the Ha'emek Medical Center in Afula. Now, that is quite a leap. You know, my niece was telling me, who works for El Al, that, you know, the planes leaving Israel are half empty. The planes arriving in Israel are overbooked. And I think there's something within that alone. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are a lot of people who want to go and help, and they just can't figure out how to do it. And of course, I know the medical situation much better than non-medical volunteerism. And I think it hasn't been easy for interested physicians to actually find positions there for many reasons. And I think that there would be a much larger delegations of doctors, for instance, probably nurses as well, that want to go to help, but it's just not been possible in many situations. But there are a lot of people who want to go, for sure.
So you arrived in Israel shortly after October 7th. Very often trips to Israel in of itself are stories prior to the big story. And I think yours is one of them. You actually arrived in Israel at some point on British Airways, and you were circling above the country. And at some point in time, it was decided you're just not going to land, and you had to fly back, right, to London. Tell us about that.
So I decided as soon as I could find a place that had any interest in taking me there. Once I did find the place, that I would immediately try and get there, and it was more challenging because Air Canada had stopped flying. So it was arranged through my Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. He got me a flight through British Airways, and I left on the Tuesday evening. So it was the attack was Shabbat morning. It was a couple of days later. I arrived in London very early in the morning and had to make the connecting flight to Israel on British Airways. It ran like a crazy one, just trying to get there on time, finally get on the flight. And I'm sitting in the middle section, so I can't really see that well out the windows. And the plane takes off and makes its way to Ben Gurion. And finally, we're at that point where they say, please sit down. You can't get up now. We're going to be landing shortly. And then it's like nothing happens for a long time. We're just not landing. And then at some point, you can tell by looking at the screen that shows you where the flight is actually en route, where the location is. You see it turning around, so you kind of know there's something going on here. So then on the PA system, they make this announcement that because of threats of missiles at Ben Gurion Airport, that they have to move the flight back to London. So you just sit there, you're going, what's going to go on here? That's funny. Part of me thought it's a little bit similar to the days, in the early days when Jews were trying to get in after World War II. The British kept them out, sent them to Cyprus, etc. Like, the British are still trying to keep me out from going here. And we end up back in London, and luckily Rabbi Israel then routed me the next morning very early. Like, we arrived back about 10, 11 at night there, and then next morning, I was on a flight, I think 5 or 6 in the morning, going to Zurich. And then finally, an El Al flight went from Zurich and in a very heavily guarded part of the Zurich airport, and flew in from Zurich, arriving sometime late in the evening in Tel Aviv on a flight that was, essentially all Israelis there, and very silent, quiet flight. Strange to land in Ben Gurion at this point, where there's really almost no passengers in the hallway, and all of a sudden you're there, right? And I think soon after I got there, there was probably one of the alarms or sirens went off because I was going to Bat Yam that night, and you go, okay, we're here now.
But Brad, do you get scared at any point, or did you get scared at any point of that flight or upon landing?
Actually, no, it wasn't. Not for a second. And I found that as soon as I landed, I had quite the opposite. I finally had a sense of sort of being at peace with myself at that point. I found the days before going there extremely stressful and just totally out of body experience of what we were experiencing. And I thought, like, as soon as the plane landed, I just had an inner calm come over me of like, okay, I'm here now, I'm where I need to be. And I never lost that feeling the entire time I was there, despite many rocket alarms in Bat Yam, where I was for part of the trip. But I found as soon as I left, as soon as I'm flying out, this sort of sense came upon me again, and I still feel it right now. So quite the opposite of being afraid.
You're my heart doctor, so I know you well from that perspective. And you're a friend of mine from when I was a kid. We've known each other since the beginning, really. Your brother, John Strauss, is one of my best friends. We were at 4 years old, 5 years old. I remind you, you used to bug us a lot, by the way. You were a bit of a pain then.
I think it's the other way around, Avrum, but you were a fair floor hockey player, probably not a great one, but you were a fair one, I would say. And so I would let you play.
You're a good man, Brad. I don't know why. I have these images in my head of me being on a breakaway and getting by you very easily. So that being said,
that must have been imagination after.
So somebody's rewriting history. We're revisionists, one of us. But what's fascinating, I think, about you, watching you as you grew up and as your career developed as a heart doctor, is that I think that you decided more than just being a cardiologist and doing your rounds in the hospital, right? That wasn't enough for you, because I know that when I read your resume, you were the chief of Schulich Medical at Sunnybrook in Toronto. You've been involved in over 400 papers that have been published, and you're one of those guys who's very intent upon furthering the science and the medicine of the heart by coming up with commercial devices that will help people like me and so many others. I was thinking, by the way, about those commercial devices that you're involved in. Your father, Harry, God bless his soul, who only died a short 2 years ago, right? He was a retailer. He sold men's suits. Do you think you got some of your dad's retail blood in terms of the development of medical devices?
Well, I'm not sure I got a drop of any of his retail abilities. That's probably why I went into medicine, because I was so hopeless.
Because you couldn't sell suits.
I couldn't do anything at the store. I had to find something else for sure. But my dad was a very creative individual. He could see things that, how he loved his job, number one, and that's something I remember very clearly, and was unique about him, how much he really loved what he was doing, and he worked until he really couldn't anymore because of COVID, etc. But he until he was 89, and he absolutely loved everything about it, and he was enthusiastic about it, and he told me never stop working. This is one of his major themes to me, and I think the idea of creativity is across so many different aspects of life, and certainly in medicine, that is the part that has kept me excited, energetic, enthusiastic, and I still feel it to this day. I always have enjoyed seeing patients, and being a sort of more traditional, conventional physician that looks after patients with diseases, etc. But I think it's the creativity of doing research and innovation that is really the part that I love the most, and gets me excited at this time still a lot.
Yeah, I just want to stay on that theme for a moment. As I said, I knew your family very well. I know your family well. Your brother John now runs Stars Menswear, as your father did, as your uncle did. He's taken that over and he's doing a phenomenal job. I knew your sister Robin, who passed away. Also, just a lovely, compassionate, kind human being. And of course, your dear mother, who's still with us. She's 90 years old. I remember growing up and listening to your mother sing at our shul, at our synagogue. And what a magnificent, magnificent voice she had.
Thank you.
You do come from a lot of creativity and a lot of love and a lot of compassion.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate you only missed my sister Marcy, but okay.
Yeah, Marcy. Yeah, that's true too. Yes.
It's good too. Yeah, no, it's an amazing family, and we've had a few tough times along the way, obviously with Robin, but my uncles. I just come from an incredible family that wants to be successful, that sees, I think, being a good person, taking care of things the right way, as being essential to being a good person. And I think I learned that in Kitchener, and I think I carry those lessons very much, by the way, taught to me by your own parents, who were extremely influential, and I was very close to them. I followed the rabbi and the Rebbitzin. So I think you can take me out of Kitchener, but you can never take that part out of me, because it's so deeply embedded in all of my DNA where I was brought up. So we come from an amazing past that shaped us all the way through, for sure.
So when you're sitting around late at night in Israel talking to your colleagues and they ask you where you're from, do you say Toronto or Kitchener?
No, I think I say where I initially came from, because people often ask me, like, why are you here? What are you doing?
Yeah, why are you there? That's right. Yeah.
How did you get to this point of your life that you're willing to leave your family and travel over here in the middle of this war, and live in this place that you don't know and amongst people you've never met before? So I think there's always a certain sort of curiosity about who you are and how you got to that point. So inevitably it seems to come up with them, and it is challenging to talk about how you were raised in a place where there may be a few hundred Jews out of 100,000 people there, and how you were the only Jewish kid in your class all the way through, and how you had two lives. Your life as a person living in Kitchener with all the rest of the people in Kitchener, and then you had this unique sort of synagogue life that you went in and out of, and you did it from an early age. And so I think it's quite interesting how that ultimately had maybe even more effect on you than the greater, sort of life around you, which I'm not sure I would have predicted at that time of my life, but it certainly, the impact has been deep from our earliest childhoods, for sure.
The town, the city that we come from, Kitchener, Ontario, which is in southern Ontario, is formerly called Little Berlin.
Mm.
It has a huge German population. And I know, obviously, many people who we grew up with and have a lot of discussions with them. We have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
And I often ask people who come from Kitchener, formerly Little Berlin, if they experienced anti-Semitism there. I did. I did, especially when I was little, because I was wearing my kippah. And I told my dad, I think at the end of kindergarten or grade 1, Dad, I'm not wearing a kippah anymore to school. And he, rightfully so, said, okay, because it was just too uncomfortable for me. I had kids chasing after me and hurling these epithets at me. We were 6 years old, but it was not a comfortable time. I was actually very scared walking to shul on Shabbat, which with my kippah on. Did you have any anti-Semitic go through any anti-Semitic experiences in Kitchener?
Yeah, I think overall, I didn't think that I had a lot of them, but I want to describe it a little bit more, really. Obviously, there are times that people would say things that were clearly anti-Semitic, and it can be from kids your own age, can be from teachers, definitely from teachers. I heard a few things, but I think that what it did maybe a little bit differently than make me feel that there was a lot of anti-Semitism is I was very aware of who I was, that I could never hide anything. I could never just fit into what everyone else was, and that could be everything from the fact that you missed school on Jewish holidays and they would ask what you were doing, or that you couldn't participate in the singing of the Christmas carols. You had all these different life experiences that clearly separated you from the general ones. But on the other hand, the friends I had in those years, and many of them remain my friends, I felt very comfortable with them, and I never felt that any of them had the slightest bit of anti-Semitism. In fact, in many ways, it's helped me as an adult, because I think I have very good radar for when I feel comfortable around people and when I sense that there is other stuff going on. I think I always approached people since I was a kid with the lens that I am Jewish and what are they thinking about it, either subtly or maybe less subtly. So it's something that's very much part of my outlook on life, that I can never. I'm proud of it, and I don't want to ever hide it. But that I know that it's an issue with some people, and sometimes a very sort of unfortunate, ugly type of thing. But by and large, I also have learned to be very trusting of people that are different than me, and not be suspicious of them. But there always is this part of you that's antennae is up all the time, and I don't think I ever lost that in any way. But I don't have quite maybe the traumatic episodes. But then I didn't wear a kippah to school and things like that. So
No, what's interesting though is I believed you and your family lived across the street from, I think it was called Westmount Golf Club, which was anti-Semitic, did not allow Jews in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of. When I was a kid, I always wondered why Jews actually wanted to belong to it. That was always one of my. I actually still can't really understand why someone would want to be at a club that really doesn't want you to be there. But I think there was also the Granite Club. There were a few other places there that were questionable in terms of their attitudes toward Jews. But I didn't. By and large, although I was maybe a little bit suspicious of things, I didn't feel that my friends and my social milieu was not welcoming to me. And many people I met, teachers, many were wonderful. So I'll tell you one thing is interesting. Maybe you can think about it. I found the shul growing up sort of a kind of an unusual place, especially when you compared it to the life, your regular life in school, or your friends' parents or their grandparents. Because within our shul, there were almost everyone of a certain age had immigrated to Canada, and they all had accents, and they all had sometimes they had some fairly peculiar habits, and the way they talked to you, the way they talked, the way they moved, and they seem, yeah, I mean, and that includes, even my own grandparents were immigrants, had accents, etc. And you contrasted that with with the rest of your life, and yet you had this dear closeness with this place, the shul, that in many ways impacted on your life outside of it, to the point that, I think you in school you weren't always getting good grades just for yourself or for your family. You were like, you were doing it for the community. You felt this sense that you couldn't let anyone down. If you did well, the community celebrated, and that sense of a community is, I'm not sure that you have that the same way in Toronto. I don't think my kids had it because they went to Jewish day schools, etc., all the way through. But the fact that you're this sort of little group of people that um, you know seem so much different in terms of how you talk, how you walk, how you behave to each other, and yet they're as important aspect of your life as your parents and your grandparents. It's unique. What do you think? Around you must notice that too.
Yeah, I feel, Brad, like we came from a novel,
Yeah,
a Jewish novel, shtetl like.
yeah,
Whenever I talk to our contemporaries or people whom we grew up with in Kitchener, that aspect of the shul always is discussed. The warmth of it. It was a small little world that we all lived in and that we all cherished and embraced. There are certain names that come up. Certainly, my mother and father,
yeah.
God
Sure.
bless their souls, who set the tone for that beauty within the shul. But there are other names like Mrs. Brown, who was the sexton of the shul, and she used to chase you around with a broom and
No,
me.
it wasn't me. She never chased me. It was only
She
you
did,
and,
Brad.
and
No,
Robbie Brown, I think. Not me. Yeah, and Mickey
I'm
Norris.
pretty sure it was you too.
Mickey Norris.
And Mr. Kellerman, he
Yeah,
taught you bar mitzvah.
yeah. He used to hold the cigarette, just with ash on his hand. I remember that. It's just no. But all these sort of interesting characters that we grew up with, that were so foreign to the world outside of where we lived, and we just, it was just a different world for us, that we implicitly understood it, but that the community sense, and this, that you're not just there for yourself, that you're there for this group of people, uh, and that what you do matters not just to you but to them as well, I think pushes you. And I mean, sometimes it's difficult, right? Like some social experiences growing up there when you're Jewish, and you're, you know, dating, etc., can be a very difficult thing to do in a place like Kitchener, because you never know whose eyes are on you wherever you go. But
Yeah.
uh, but it's a unique shared part of our lives, for sure. And when I think back, sitting in Israel in this hostel, whatever, those people are sitting on my shoulder too, right? They never really leave us, so we're always seeing it through their eyes as well, even though many of them are long gone at this point. So.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to hear you talk about Kitchener, because obviously my context and the way I see my upbringing in Kitchener is through my own eyes and through my own experiences. We were the rabbi's children,
Yeah.
and therefore our experience were dramatically different than yours, but they were beautiful. And I remember your brother Johnny, yourself, other members of your family in the community coming to our house on Saturday lunch, and partaking of my mother's wonderful food. By the way, talking about mother's food, I have to tell you something. Every time I make a tuna sandwich,
Yeah.
I put a little bit of relish in it because I learned that from your mother.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
mother she made the greatest tuna sandwiches. God bless her.
Yeah.
But we share a beautiful history, and I think one of the reasons I want to do this interview was because of that. Yeah, you're my doctor, and yeah, you've done something incredible by making Aliyah and doing volunteerism in Israel. But you're a dear friend, and I've known you forever, and God willing, we'll know each other for many, many years to come.
Well,
Um,
the audience doesn't know your father, your mother, and they are they were extremely impactful, uh, larger than life people. Um, and obviously, what you've done in many ways is you're just part of that same DNA, all the wonderful things you've done, and it's not surprising because there, I just I just haven't met over my life up to this point type of individuals that have had such a huge effect on my life, and the strength that they had, especially being living in Kitchener and sort of shepherding this congregation of people that was, in some ways cohesive, other ways not, and it's and you as and your siblings, I think, had I never thought it was very easy for you to grow up in a situation where there weren't a lot of other families similar to yours, and it's but we're more but the families were more similar than different,
yeah,
even
very much so.
even if the sense of observance, etc., was different. The idea of belonging to a specific group and that group being important was uniform throughout whatever your degree of observance was at the time.
But Brad, at some point in time, you actually adjusted your observance. You
Mm.
became from, you became religious, right? What? Why is that?
Yeah, well, I always consider myself very traditional. I never. You're right. I wasn't so careful about mitzvot for especially for many years when I was in university and first got married, etc. I think what led me sort of towards that was living in the Netherlands for a few years. I was doing some specialty training in a very high level cardiology center in Rotterdam,
You got
and
your PhD there, did you
yeah,
not?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
On stenting, I actually have a PhD in stenting, but which is it's a bit like having a PhD sometimes in maybe pants or something. But like actually, I like advice. But and while I was there, I was doing a lot of research, and our second child was born there, and we moved back to Toronto in 1992 from Rotterdam, and I started thinking. We moved back to a Jewish neighborhood that near where my in-laws lived, etc. And I started thinking, what am I going to do with my kids? And I had this concern. Even when I was in Rotterdam, I probably would have liked to have stayed longer. I loved the work there, and I loved we were on the cutting edge of everything, and I was working with most, the number one probably intervention cardiologist in the world, Patrick Cerise, and I wanted to keep going with him because I love it was so exciting and interesting. But eventually, my wife said, I'm going back to Toronto, and if you want to if you want to be around your kids and myself, you have to, it's time to go back. So I had to go back. And then when I went back, I think, what are my kids, what are they going to end up like? And I had this real concern that if I didn't give them not only give them a Jewish education in terms of their schooling, if I didn't do things at home, what if one day they leave it and they say to me, why should we care? You never did anything yourself. So I started going to shul on Shabbat again, and I liked it. I mean, it wasn't like I ever didn't like it. I just wasn't part of my routine, and I started to do more. And like most things, once I get involved in it, I like to know why I'm doing something, what it is I'm doing, and I really enjoyed the intellectual aspect of Judaism and doing many of the mitzvot and practices and rituals. I really enjoyed, and they made me feel closer to who I think I should be. And so it wasn't something I just did over a day or 2 days. It was something that's been moving since the mid 1990s. it's never been a straight line. I think sometimes parts of it I take a bit more, and other times I get a little, I don't know, feels close to some parts of it, but it's definitely a life journey, and one that I'm very, very pleased that I took the time and continue to take the time to understand it better, because if you're not learning about what being Judaism is, how can you know who you are? So you have to know who you are, and I'm very proud of who we are. By the way, I think it's
I am too.
scholarship. Yeah,
I'm extremely proud of who we are. It's fascinating because as the son of a clothier, as somebody who grew up in Kitchener,
yeah,
in a small shtetl, as somebody who became a doctor, became religious, there's overlap all over the place. And one area that I think of often is the overlap of Gemilat Chasadim, of Chesed, of kindness. Now, I know that there were many times where Jews who had family members in Sunnybrook Hospital, which is where you're a doctor, had to stay over Shabbat. A dear friend of mine, Bert's father, was in the hospital,
yeah.
and you gave him your office to sleep in all Shabbat, which is a tremendous form of chesed, a tremendous form of kindness. Are you allowed to do that, by the way?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it like most things, it sort of started off in a way that it wasn't like I decided that I would do that. It was something that just happened because there was no other solution. I think in the beginning. So I think the first time was when I was at St. Mike's, and someone needed, it's far away from any place to stay. And so some family, they had some family there, and they wanted to stay near the family. And first I didn't quite get it, right? Because I wasn't used to people actually wanting to stay that close to the family at night. I thought most families I saw, when the ring, when the ring went to go home, they just go home and say, okay, I'm going
They
home.
were off.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, for these families, Jewish families in particular, that never wanted to be more than 20 feet away from where the patient was, and that
Yeah.
became impossible in terms of that they couldn't stay in the rooms for various reasons. Um, so I started doing it, and I had this great office because when I went to Sunnybrook, they gave me like 3 different rooms, and so when that started coming up there, I thought, well, okay, well, why not? And I would write little letters, like give them a letter of permission. Actually, I never sought permission from any official place to let it happen. I was always careful that medical records would be kept locked, and that I wouldn't be in any way accused of being not careful with confidentiality and things. But I started bringing in mattresses, and then Salim, brought me all these uh, water urns, etc. I mean, and sometimes there were some really funny things that happened from it. One individual who stayed with me on Shabbat for many weeks because her mother had a wig store or whatever, and she used to have those what are they, like their white stuff.
Those styrofoam heads.
Styrofoam, yeah. So they have them, and she would have uh, her wigs in my office on these styrofoam heads. And I remember coming in on the Monday morning, having some major meeting with, some big cardiologist. I can't remember who it was. And then I looked over on my counter, and there were 2 wigs there and I was saying, what am I going to do? this guy's coming in. So I had a little coat rack sort of cover them. And then, like a couple days later, I saw her, and she said, like, have you seen anything about my wigs? Like, she had forgotten she had left them there. And so but it was interesting that my routine on Fridays was always to, last couple hours of the day, go make sure that I had water there, that they would come, that everyone was kind of nicely settled in for Shabbat. And I often had moments to speak to the people who would stay in my office. Sometimes I had like 6, 7 people in 3 different rooms. I mean, it was pretty, it was pretty unusual situation, and we'd sit and talk, and it's at the end of it, I always felt, maybe that they thought it was a nice thing for me to do, but I walked away feeling, Shabbat's here. I looked, I felt good about what I did, and talked to these people. And when it happened that they finally got a beautiful Bikur Cholim place to stay, and they moved out of my office, it was like it was end of an era. It was. I felt a
Yeah.
bit sad about losing that closeness to people that I had in that Friday afternoon routine that was so regular for me. Stopped. But
Those are beautiful stories. Those
yeah,
are sort of the nuancical aspects of our lives. Shalom nida, like they say in Hebrew, we should know. But those are the stories that come up at a person's shiva. You go, oh, that guy Dave, he used to allow me to
well,
stay in his home, but God forbid, I don't want to say, but those are like such beautiful, intimate stories.
yeah.
I'm actually really happy that you're sharing that story. You know why?
Why?
I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you why.
You want to leave a wig in my office or something?
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
I've had 3 heart attacks, right?
I don't
So,
want to
so,
say
so,
it's confidentiality here. I don't want
yeah, okay.
to.
So I can say it. And that brings us so much closer, right? Um, and when I had my first heart attack, I wrote an article in the Canadian Jewish News about it.
I think I remember that.
And you said to me, Avrum, because that's what people growing up, I grew up with, call me. They call me Avrum, not Avrum. You said Avrum. Why did you write that article? And I said, I'll tell you why, Brad, because you said it's very intimate when you have a heart attack. Why'd you write about it? I said, because it's intimate, because I want to share it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you had a hard time with that. But now I see that you're giving over much more of your life than you used to. I guess you've opened up.
Maybe at this stage, there were certain things by being head of a large cardiac program
Yeah, yeah.
that enabled me to do things that were very much aligned with my values, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to Sunnybrook. I'm grateful for my colleagues, and grateful for the patients that allow me to do certain. And I'll tell you a couple of them. And one is when I was head, whenever we had a programmatic event, whether maybe cardiology, like or whatever the group was, I always had it catered kosher.
Did
Always,
you?
yeah.
You did, eh?
And because first of all, most people didn't even know because it was good. They liked it the way it was. In fact, when they stopped doing it after I left, I think some of them regretted that there.
They
Uh,
started going to milk and honey.
One time I went into the place that we often get it from, and they saw my credit card and they went, "Whoa, you're the guy!" So but and also we had some Muslim members of the group that were now able to eat, and they were they themselves would always tell me how great it was that they could participate fully in these events, and they really like not feeling left out is really important, and you can't, not just for Jews, it's for everyone. And the other thing that I had that was really quite amazing is bringing in Israeli fellows, which to me was probably of all the things I've done, what I'm most proud of was the fact that I've had these relationships and done the training, and that somehow I'm not sure how. Really, I'm not sure how I was able to do a lot of stuff. That we became the largest place in the world for bringing in Israeli interventional cardiologists, United States, Canada, anywhere,
Really?
and I see the results of that when I go to Israel. I mean, almost every hospital there has people trained at Sunnybrook, and you can't do that without the support of a hospital has to be behind it, and your colleagues who are not Jewish have to be behind it. Yes, we raised money to do it in many ways, but that wasn't for every single person that came.
Well,
And those give I'm really the fact that happened. I don't think it's because I anything amazing. I just that I had tremendous support and still have it to do it, and I see that as being maybe my most contribution of anything I've done in medicine. So
yeah, that's lovely. Before we start talking about your work in Israel,
mm,
what something that I've always wondered is I've had um, 3, 4 stents put in,
yeah,
and the process of having a stent inserted into your heart, the valves, is one where you're lying down and there's a team around you, and you're awake. And very often they'll ask you, do you want to watch while we do it? And my initial response is, and I'm assuming many patients feel this way, no, I don't. And the reason why I say no, although my eyes start to go towards the screen at some point because of the fascination and the curiosity, is because you're touching my heart.
Yeah.
You're touching my heart, right?
Yeah.
And obviously the danger of that is clear. But even more than that,
Yeah.
I start to think about life and the blood pulsating through this. I think a heart is a limb. Am I correct?
The limb? You
It's
keep going with this. I'm not sure I quite get it yet, but keep going.
Yeah. So it becomes this existential journey that I go on as your team is working on my heart, the lev, as we call it in Hebrew,
Mm-hmm.
that thing inside my body, which makes me live, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's my soul, or maybe my soul lies in it. How did you choose cardiology? Why?
So you can ask what my family history is, and then you will know in about 5 seconds. So I lost
What's your family history?
lots of cardiac disease.
And
I think growing up, I think I knew I wanted to be a doctor very, very early on in high school. Given given certain medical issues in my family, I think kid always wants to make things good, fix things. Um, and as I went through high school and then went into university, I was very much committed and knew I wanted to do that. And so I totally set all my energies. And even as an early university student, I knew I wanted to go to medical school. I needed good grades, and I was going to get them no matter what. Like I could have been like, instead of professional athlete, I was like a professional student. So well trained, honed in on it. And then as I got into medicine, uh, and then I started to do cardiology as an early specialty during internship because you rotate through. I already had a huge link to it based on lots of family members having cardiac disease, but I really enjoyed it. I just liked the organ. I mean, it sounds a bit strange maybe, but the way you examine it, the way you image it, the way you treat it. But I never thought that I had the hands to do angioplasty. My father had me convinced that all of us were not able to fix anything with our hands, and we've never, we're good thinkers maybe, but not good putters of putting things together. But then I went to Ottawa and I became as a cardiology resident, became very interested in this new specialty of interventional cardiology, and convinced myself after doing a while that I actually could do it with my hands, and I could be really good with my hands. And that's what convinced me to go work with this famous person in the Netherlands, which I was lucky enough to get at the time, Canadian Heart Foundation, scholarship, fellowship to go there. So, and over the years, I can't think of anything that I could have done that would have given me the satisfaction that being an interventional cardiologist has done. It's not just that you diagnose things and you can look after people with heart failure, but the fact that you can go in patient in the middle of a heart attack, and even when they're dying, and actually do something to stop that and change it. I mean, it doesn't. How can you find anything that's more satisfying than doing that? And I've been able to do it for many years, and I think I've done it, quite well over the years. And I've loved it. And I always felt the huge responsibility of it because, of course, it doesn't always go the way you want. Almost always it does, but the technology grew as during my period of time when I was training. Like everything is relatively recent within the time frame of my my own profession, being a cardiologist and an interventional cardiologist. And the innovation and creativity that goes with being an interventional cardiologist also very much was well suited to what I really love, as well as the actual patient care part. So there's no one who has more gratitude for being able to do what they have in their career than me, because I couldn't make this any better than it's been. Couldn't believe it.
I love your passion, Bradley. I love your passion, and you're a wonderful doctor, and that comes out in our discussions when I come to visit you. My question, your answer was great, but my question was a little different. Succinctly put, I'm assuming you've had a heart in your hands. You've held a beating heart.
Well, we do everything through catheters, right? So I've been in hearts a lot of the time over the last 30 years. Yeah, also. Yeah.
You've seen a chest
catheter. I've seen chests open. I've seen open heart surgery. It's not what I do, but I've been, whether it's your hands or it's a catheter that's connected to your hand that's going to the heart, to me, it's pretty much the same, right?
My question really succinctly is, where does God fit into all of this?
Yeah, that's a tough one. When I'm in there doing it, I have to admit that sometimes, especially when it was a really high risk thing, I've said tefillot before I go in. Believe me.
Have you? You have?
Oh yeah, many times, and also when coming out, maybe just as much because you're just so grateful that everything went well. But when I'm doing my thing in there, I'm like zoned in, and I don't think about anything other than what I really have to do. And I think it's before you go in there, and after, and sometimes, especially if things haven't gone well, which is always a difficult thing to bear. So, but I'm not sure I have a good answer for that, other than it's maybe so deep inside me that it's hard to express it. I'm not sure that I ever would publicly anyway, but I have said many tefillot. Let's put it that way.
Do you have a special relationship with your own heart? On the high holidays, when we go al Ched and we tap our hearts, is there something that you know that I don't know?
What do you mean? I know about mine that I don't know about yours, or the other way
You're
around?
You're a heart guy, right?
Yeah.
I ran an organization. We help the homeless, so I know something about the homeless you don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to elicit from you. I just think to myself, when you guys were in there and you were fixing my heart, you were putting a stent in it. That was my lifeblood. That was my connection to my son. What you were doing in there was.
I've always been aware that the difference between a good outcome and a terrible outcome is sometimes pretty small, and it's a huge responsibility. But I always felt like the pitcher in the ninth inning, the reliever, the one who wants to get the ball, right? Even if there was high risk things, I figure you're not a good interventional cardiologist unless you want to get the ball in the ninth inning. Like you don't want to leave. Generally speaking, you don't want to leave it for someone else to do, because I always say, okay, just give me that. I want to go out there and do it. And sometimes I think after, why did I do it? But that I think you're right. You're only a hair away. Very close to some person not making it out of there and making a huge difference. And the only reason you can do this stuff, I'll tell you, after all these years, is because the good ones far outweigh and are much more frequent than the bad ones. But knowing that bad ones can happen also carries a huge responsibility and burden on you, and you never remember the good ones. You only remember the ones that didn't go the way you wanted, and that over a number of years, I think that does take a little bit of out of you.
And Bradley, you also have a lot of muzzle, and the reason I say that is because you were born in a damn good time, good time. And here's why I say that. Okay, I brought this to the interview, my blister pack.
Oh yeah.
Okay, why I brought it to the interview
Yeah.
is because you said something to me which was extraordinarily important to me and that I carry with me all the time. You said to me, you said, Avrum, your father died in 1989 from cardiac arrest, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Had he been living in these days, he probably would have survived, right?
Yeah. I think it was
And
good.
you
Yep.
talked to me about the incredible findings and discoveries that that we've done over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have them.
Yeah.
So you have luck in terms of when you were born.
I picked,
A
I
good
picked the
time.
best specialty without even knowing at the time that I
Yeah.
was. I mean, I loved it anyway, but the fact that it's evolved so well, and we have such better treatments and better, better ways of treating patients. And I do think if your father wasn't done it, when his heart attack wasn't the time when we take people in the cath lab, that was just 15 years before that, a little bit later, could have been done. Yeah.
October 7th happens.
Yes.
A terrible day in the history of the Jewish people. Some people are saying that it's like a pogrom that occurred. Other people are comparing the atrocities to the Holocaust. And it's Shmini Atzeret, it's a Jewish holiday here in Toronto. And obviously you get word about what's going on in Israel. And your response to that is, how can I not go?
Yeah.
I have the skills to be there. I am an Oleh, which means I'm a citizen of the country. I've done all the paperwork. How can I not be there? So you went.
Well, I just had my cardiology certification in August, and I became my physician and then my cardiology, and I was Ola Chadash, and in the last year and a half, and so I had I had everything I needed to go there. Plus, I had, because of all my fellows I've trained, many potential places to work that I could just call up on my WhatsApp to say, can I come? So if I didn't come, I think you would have to say, Brad, what were you thinking? This is the most impactful time of the last 75 years of what's going on. How could you not go there? So,
Brad, what's the discussion you have with your wife prior to boarding the plane? Is she cool with all this stuff?
she's not in the room right now. So, I think my wife is. She understands me, and she knows that my longing for Israel and my sense of it is so deep that there's probably nothing she could say anyway that would change it. And I think that even though I do make her life more difficult by some of the things that I do, she either she's resigned to it, or she or she supports it. I think more she supports it. I think she feels very strongly about Israel the same way I do. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot different for someone else to say, "Way to go, Brad! You went there," than a wife who has to look after all the stuff here. And I probably do create some hard. I definitely create hardships for her by some of the things I do. Sure.
Well, your decision is not easy because you're leaving your patients here as well. You left me.
Yeah, but through Zoom and everything, you pretty much, most of them, and I have the same phone number. Most of them, I'm not sure would even have known I was gone, but that's another story.
Yeah, I have to tell you, the greatness of you and being my doc is that when I was going through some hard times, I picked up my cell phone. I called you. Go, yeah, Avrum, I'm in Israel. I go, well, that's cool. I need to talk to you, and you were good with it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
So Brad, you ended up at the Ha'amek Medical Center in Afula. For first morning, the CEO comes out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
He basically embraces you for being there.
Yeah, it's from the time I entered that, and I had never been in. I've been in many of the Israeli hospitals before. I'm not someone who hasn't been inside or done some work in them, but I'd never been there before in Afula. And the chief of cardiology, Limor Bashari, was amazing to me. Welcomed me to come, and they just immediately said, "What do you want to do? Okay, you want to do angioplasty? Go in there." I just had to sign some form. I think when you came in for the human resource thing, when I came in, it was 5 minutes, got parking, and I was ready to go. I mean, it would never happen in Canada so quickly to do it. And in my first half day there, the head of the hospital comes in, welcomes me, and also when I left, I went down to his office, met everyone, and they all, for whatever reason, they just felt this, wanted to communicate how grateful they were that I came, which, okay, but anyway, but I was impressed by everything in terms of the group there. I really enjoyed working with them and seeing what it's like there.
Right. So you did a few things while you were there. You're back in Toronto now.
Mm-hmm.
You did rounds as well. You worked with some of the interns.
Yeah, I taught. I always like teaching, and they can always. Everyone's busy there, so that have an extra person who really enjoys teaching, and they appreciate it. The 4 or 5 of the residents I did. I went to the rounds every morning that we discussed patients. They asked my opinion. I usually listened in Hebrew and understood most of it, but I would often respond in English because I didn't want to hold them up with my staggering Hebrew speaking. And then
Yeah.
I went in the cath lab, we did some high risk things, some interesting things we did. We did some work together with especially a lot of the young doctors there. And I went in the coronary care unit. I did some innovation work there. They included me 100% in everything from the moment that I arrived, and I've never felt so part of a group that really cared about each and every one of the members and looked after you. It's still, I can't get over what it was like for me there. I really loved it.
Brad, because of the war,
Yeah.
was there an increase in cardiac cases?
There's a couple of cases that I think for sure happened because of the war, because there's something called a stress cardiomyopathy. It's also known as Takotsubo. That you can see, it can be different stress. It can be something like news of someone close to you dying, or I mean, various things can cause it. But I think that there are a couple of cases because of the news and the nature of what was going on there. We definitely had a few cases that I thought were related to that. It wasn't really in the middle of an active war zone, although there were some injured soldiers who came from in the West Bank was very close. Particularly, Jenin was just, you could walk there from the hospital, and so there was some stuff going on there, and there were some injuries came in. It was more that what could happen, and on the northern border of the Hezbollah, there was constant missiles and but on a daily basis, but not in a way that provoked full war. But people were moving out. They actually moved into our area. About, I don't know, 20,000 people from Kiryat Shmona moved into the area. And you're never sure from day to day if it wouldn't just escalate to the point where the hospital had to shift into this underground hospital that they had set up there. And I went and looked at it, how they organized it. Especially in the first couple of weeks, where it really was uncertain from day to day. And the cath lab, actually, the cath lab was in a place that wasn't all that well protected. At least one of the cath labs, one was a bit more protected. But if I had to work there in the middle of that, I would have been fine. Like you just do what you do, and that's the way they were. They're very matter of fact about what needs to be done. It was interesting to be in a place that had a lot of Israeli Arabs working there and as patients working alongside Jews, especially in a time that was more. The events around us certainly could potentially affect the relationships in that place, but I was very impressed about how we worked together and kept the patient's interest always ahead of it, and worked on our own interpersonal relationships to try and, knowing that it was a difficult time, and especially the chief of cardiology, I thought, really had a lot of effort to make sure that was the case and that it was a welcoming place for everyone. Very important. She was amazing at doing that. Still
I'm
continues.
guess I'm guessing if you take a cross section of any population in Israel, let's say specifically the hospital you were working in, that you're going to find individuals there who have a son in the army, who have a daughter in the army, who have a son-in-law in the army, perhaps somebody who was abducted. or more than one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was the feeling in the air?
I think that everyone carries a lot of personal concern around about their own families. And there wasn't, whether I was working in the, went to the engineering firm that I'm doing my innovation work with, or in the hospital. There are people have all those things. Either their kids are in the army, their mates of their kids are in the army. The hostages, people I knew in hostages. One of my friends, his son was wounded. One of my patients here, the grandson was killed. A relationship to your family as well. And it's a day by day thing that you're aware of, and yet you still have a job to do. And I think doctors are very good at sectioning off parts of their lives and realizing that whatever going on personally at that time in their life, that patients, you have responsibility. They need you. You can't say, look, I'm just too. I can't do this right now. I'm just I need to come back tomorrow. That's a similar here. I think this is just part of the way doctors are, and the nurses were similar there. They had a job to do, and they did it. They'll continue to do it. But that was stressful, though. I don't want to undermine that. It really was stressful for everyone.
How do you deal with your stress?
Probably I don't admit to it. That's probably.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess like a lot of things, I try and put it somewhere in my head that I don't access it unless I need to. But every once in a while, it reminds you that it's there. But I mean, when I was there, I just kept thinking, like, look where I am here. Look,
Yeah,
how did I get to this place? And
right.
I felt so, like I told you, when I landed, I finally had some inner sense of peace, whatever the word is. Like the restlessness was gone, and I was so, like, I just could feel. I felt differently, and even though there was all kinds of awful things going on, and you're worried every day, and the soldiers being killed and hurt, and the hostages, and I felt inside myself much more comfortable and able to deal with whatever challenges there were. I find it much more difficult being here.
Bradley, we talked about the Achdus, the sense of unity in Kitchener. Let's bring it all around as we start to wrap up our schmooze together.
Sure.
The Achdus in Israel, the sense of unity in Israel, is so incredibly palpable. And every time I go online or I'm watching the news, I'll hear about another program or another group of people coming together to ensure that their fellow Israelis are okay. And we had situations with the hostages where Shabbat tables were created that were entirely empty, but they had the plates and the forks and the knives and all that stuff and pictures of each and every hostage. And they would pray for them, and they would, make a Shabbat for them. The programs, the food programs that individuals put together in order that the Chayelim and the Chayelot, the soldiers of all kinds, of all backgrounds, were well fed, is well documented. And it's phenomenal to see the intricacies that they went through in terms of making sure that food was nutritional and good. The Israeli soldiers were saying, okay, it's enough. We have enough for Shabbat. We have enough food. Yeah. What was your experience with all that Achdus, with all that unity?
Yeah, it was, and I've been in Israel a lot the past year where it has not been that sense at all.
Yes, right.
Quite the opposite. And I was blown over by it. I can't take. There's a group, the entire cardiology department. Actually, we went to a place near Beit Shan wasn't actually picking tomatoes. We're sort of rearranging the trees so it could grow, because a lot of the foreign workers had gone, and Israelis would volunteer at all these agricultural places to either pick the crops or do whatever work was necessary. So as a group, the entire cardiology department went one day to this place in near Beit Shan that I really loved that one. And actually even driving to the hospital from where I was staying, I would see in the fields along the way people definitely who weren't regular workers there, and the fact that people would just go and help out there, it was really impressive. And I saw also the delivery of food. I know that Limor Bouchari, the chief cardiologist, who's from Metula, she's actually from Metula. She would regularly go up there and take things to the soldiers that were up there, and um, every people were working in restaurants to just to prepare food. It wasn't for diners, and all the people gave up their homes, their apartments, their hotel rooms to make sure that people had a place to stay. There's no words that I can say. I've never felt that sort of achduit before. Never. It was overwhelming and beautiful to see. Wish we had it more often.
You weren't paid for your work there, were you?
No, no.
Yeah.
No. Although I might say the people I stayed with I stayed in Hoshaya, they wouldn't allow me to pay. They said you're volunteering. And I was there 5 weeks. It was,
well, who were the people? Who were they?
They're called Kadoshi family. Kadoshi. They're amazing. They own that in the back of their house they have an apartment, and I stayed there. And
how is it now that you're back in Toronto and you're driving to work at Sunnybrook? What's it like driving up to the hospital?
I think I'm finding it a little challenging being back. To be honest with you, on my corner is a police command center here, and they're very nice to the police. My wife and I went by to say hello to them today, but the fact that we actually need that, and it's in the Bialik parking lot there. I wasn't. I came back because my family said, okay, come back, and things are fairly stable at the time, like stable in terms of weren't getting worse or anything. But I'm a little bit struggling with being back. I'll be honest about that. I like I said, this restlessness came back pretty much after I returned, and it's still so hard for all of us, right? And I feel everyone's anxieties about this, but particularly my own, much more now.
When are you going back?
I think I'm going to go back for a short couple weeks in February to do some things, because I have also a business there, like a startup one I'm doing, and I think I'm going to be going back in the spring, May, June, to do some additional work there. But if things worsen and things escalate, I would go back whenever, tomorrow. if someone says you can come help us, I'm there.
Well, kol hakavod to you. How's your mom feeling about all this?
I think she likes to have me around. She still likes it.
Yeah, for sure. She worried about her boy?
I don't know. She seems okay, but she probably does a little.
Yeah. Brad, listen, it was a wonderful interview. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for doing this. Yeah, thanks for doing this. In conclusion, I have to ask, do you have one particular message for the Jewish people at this very difficult time?
I think the support for Israel, however you do it, is so needed right now, and there's so many different ways that one can express it. And I think that we have to stick together, because I've never felt this level of anti-Semitism before, which is sort of never what I see now. And I think we have to carefully evaluate what's going on here, and that will take some time, even after this has passed us, to see what it is this place is all about, where we live, and whether our future is here. So that's some of the things I've been thinking about.
Bradley Strauss, thank you for being a good friend. Thanks for being a good doctor, and thank you for being a good Jew and a good Zionist. All of the above.
I want to leave on one line. You're a very good interviewer, and you're a better interviewer than you're a floor hockey player.
We'll just have to take a consensus on that. But no, seriously, I was so excited to do this interview with you because we've known each other for so long. And I wanted to really understand what it is you do, how you do it, and your commitment to the Jewish people and the state of Israel. So, as they say in Yiddish, Yisher Koach, well done. You're doing a great job in life.
Thanks, Avrum.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. We're going to be back soon. My dear friend Ellie Rubenstein is setting up an interview with me and the founder of Israel Guide Dogs. It's a fascinating organization. Essentially, what they do is they raise dogs to help those who are visually impaired, but they're also using those dogs to help soldiers and otherwise who are going through deep stress and trauma. So we're looking forward to that perspective on what's going on in Israel. And until then, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. We are the Jewish people. We are a strong people. We will get through this, and we will be even better for it. Thank you so much for listening. Am Yisrael Chai.